Hello and welcome back to the Bearded Nerd Podcast, where we help new players and new game masters learn the game, play the game, and grow their love for tabletop RPGs such as Dungeons & Dragons. Today, we're going to talk about heroes. Every world has heroes, but what separates a good setting from a great one are the stories that those heroes leave behind. Today, we're going to talk about myths, legends, and folklore. The stories people tell around the fire, essentially. Tales that explain the seasons, justify old laws, and warn children about what hides really in the woods. Myths aren't just history. They are an interpretation. They show how people understand their world and what they value and what they fear. So today we're going to break down how to create a believable legends and folklore portion of your setting, and ones that feel ancient, mysterious, and alive. So, without further ado, let's dive into this episode of the Bearded Nerd Podcast. Let's talk about why myths matter in world building. Because you may think to yourself, this may not even be necessary. This may be added fluff that my players would essentially do the writing of, so to speak. On one hand, you may be right. But the thing about myth and mythology in a world building aspect is that they do three essential things for your setting. They explain the unknown, they teach morals and identity, and they connect the present to the past. Let's think about Star Wars. The myth and legend of the Jedi in episodes 4, 5, 6 explain this belief of the Force, right? It introduces us to these people, these space wizards who use this magical energy called the Force. So in a sense, these things, these myths, that make sense in the setting explain things that really can't be explained. Maybe it can explain death or fate or creation, right? The mythos around that. You can create mythos around weather and storms, right? That the gods are angry and cast storms, and therefore you pray to the gods for that, right? Maybe they believe thunder is the sound of gods arguing. But it explains something that's unknown, especially if you're playing in a world such as Dungeons & Dragons or a game of Draw Steel, where in both settings, typically, science is not necessarily the forefront. It's fantasy. From there, myths teach morals and identity. Myths shape what a culture values. They encode lessons about courage, honor, greed, or betrayal, right? We know in our own world the hero that stole fire from the god teaches us the virtue of progress and the dangers of pride. But using the analogy of Star Wars, we're able to say, hey, the Jedi were people who had a moral compass of sorts. This is what they believed in. This is what they valued. And we can make an opposition to the Empire who is opposed to that. Vader is the visualization rather of what the Jedi oppose in episodes 4, 5, 6. This opposite, so to speak, of Luke and of Yoda and of Obi-Wan. And it teaches the audience the lesson of who is, quote, good and who is, quote, bad. Lastly, they connect the present to the past. Myths often blur truth and history, giving weight to ruins, relics, and symbols. So when players discover a myth's reality or its deception, it makes your world feel layered and meaningful, right? A myth in the world's memory of what it thinks happened. That's something that stuck with me when I first heard that said at a convention. A myth is the world's memory of what it thinks happened. I think that kind of tone brings in the multi-layer aspect, the further immersion of the players into the world that's so crucial to running a great game. Now, there are 3 kinds of myths that every world needs. You don't need to write an entire pantheon, but I do believe that you should focus on a variety of different myths. You need a creation mythos, a heroic mythos, and cautionary tales or mythos, so to speak. Number 1, the creation mythos. This explains how the world began and how the first people emerged, or how death entered the world, right? Maybe you could use the sun and moon were once lovers, chasing each other forever due to a curse. Or the world was forged from the bones of a slain god and the world built around it. Whatever it may be. But the mythos of creation creates the tone. It could feel tragic in origin, but it's going to feel different no matter what. It's going to feel different from the divine harmony that was, and then the disorientation that is currently, what the world or what the players are stepping into now. The heroic mythos is the stories of great figures who shape the world, whether real or imagined. This is the part of the story where you can play around with. You can run sessions during the heroic age to basically say, hey, this is how we shape the world, and then it affects the players who are playing currently in the world. You could do that, and that's a really cool tactic. But what's probably more practical is for you to basically create stories of great figures who shaped the world, whether it's the Smith of Storms forging the first, thunderbolt, or the first sailor who taught mortals to navigate the sea, right? Whatever it may be. Heroic myths make that history feel alive, and they give players something to live up to challenge, to orient themselves. And as I mentioned earlier, you could run a variety of one-shots with friends who don't necessarily play in your game world, but they can shape it and they could do cool things, and then you could kind of give that information back to your players. But that's actually a different episode for a different day. But more to come on that. And lastly, cautionary tales. These are small local legends told to warn specifically children and people, or to explain certain behaviors, right? One of the examples is like, oh, don't light a fire in the woods at night, or the pale lady will find you, or never whistle or say your name in Appalachian country because someone may capture that name and draw you in, right? Those are myths and cautionary tales that people have told others for generations, and it's a way to warn children and people of a particular behavior, right? But the smaller the myth in this regard, the closer it feels to the player. That's why I stated small local legends are really good. You don't have to have a worldly legend in this cautionary way. You could use that sparingly. The small local stuff, like the village bartender that you are kind of traveling through, warns you to extinguish all lights outside of the village and to stay in the inn past, or before whatever time, 9 o'clock, right? Because if you're out there, Baba Yaga is going to get you. I don't know, whatever it may be. But that really makes the myth, it really makes that cautionary tale hit home. We now enter into the segment of the episode where we talk about how to write a believable myth. It's going to be very simple in the structure. So if there's any part that would want you in the audience to write down, it is right now. Number 1, you need to define what it explains. Does the myth surround nature, morality, or memory? Is it a truth? Is it a lie? Or is it just in servitude of something? Once you define what it explains, the myth needs to be simple. It's not complex. It has to be memorable, not only from a philosophical perspective, but a quite literal, memorable. It needs to literally be easy enough to remember. One event, one message, done, right? Because in reality, the NPCs have told this story from generation to generation. They've never written it down. They wouldn't. They would say it in a way that's so simple that you can remember. Again, don't whistle or say your name at night because this person's going to get you, right? Very simple. You know what the message is. You know the event that will occur if you do this action. And pretty much that's it. Third, add emotion. Myths survive because they feel real. Whether it's a mythos around love or fear, jealousy or hope, these are timeless. So add a layer of emotion. From there, add imperfection. Myths change over time. Add some conflicting versions between religions and regions. Maybe the cleric has a perspective on this myth or on this cautionary tale versus the shaman of the village, who are kind of opposed to one another. What do you believe? Who do you believe in? That imperfection, that contradiction is perfect because it adds realness to it. And then lastly, anchor it to the culture, right? So let it reflect the people's values. If they're in a warlike culture, maybe betrayal is viewed as something dishonorable, and that those who betray their liege lords or their brothers or sisters in battle basically go to the equivalent of hell, right? Maybe they review, or maybe a people who are kind of warlike and cunning review betrayal as good. I don't know, whatever your world is. Whatever it may be, a good myth isn't always true, but it's always useful. Now that we know how to write the myths, let's talk about using the myths in play. Here's how to make myths more than just flavor text. You need to use foreshadowing. So using myths as clues, right? The king who sleeps beneath the mountain might actually be an undead waiting, or it just may be more metaphysical or metaphorical, if you will. But you need to use some foreshadowing. Artifacts, such as relics or holy sites, that tie directly to the legends, that really draws in the players to discover that artifact based upon the myth. Third, which is the easiest, NPC belief. The NPCs have to believe it to the core. Maybe they quote it or misquote it. Maybe they make the dialogue richer by enveloping the story a little bit more and really making it seem far-fetched. But that NPC needs to believe it. From there, contradiction. Different cultures tell the same myth differently. Let that be seen through your role play of the different NPCs, and let your players argue about which version is true by giving them secretly via message or private message what each culture, what each people believe regarding that myth, and then let it loose. And then lastly, subversion. Let the players rewrite the myth by their actions. Let it become a new legend, if anything. You know how I talked about we would get to the one-shot idea? Well, this is it. You could gather a group of friends, maybe the players that currently play in your campaign, or maybe a whole new set of players, and you tell them the one-shot idea, which to them, it's what's going to happen. To your other players, it's surrounding a myth in the current world, and let them play. Let's see what happens. Maybe those players rewrite the entire myth, and now a new legend spawns, and something really cool happens from there, right? So those are ways you can actually use myths in an actual game that makes sense, it's believable, and it's actually really fun. But remember, when you build myths into your world, you're not just adding lore, you're adding a little bit of soul into it. Myths are made to explain the unexplainable. They give weight to those things such as like a ruin, or they give context to faith and purpose to the heroes. They make your players ask, what if the stories are true? And then when that happens, that's when your world feels alive. Thank you for listening. If you want a printable guide with templates and myth writing prompts, make sure to check out Patreon for more of that. And until next time, keep your legends alive, your stories layered, and your worlds full of wonder. Be kind and compassionate to one another, folks. And as always, keep gaming.